But yeah, it's been a crazy time in the crypto world. As I was talking about on the last podcast, you saw Shiba Inu went up 400%. The other dog-based, not even its own coin. Like Dogecoin is a real coin, but Shiba Inu is not even. It's just a token, as far as I know.
Yeah.
I paid so little attention to it, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of funny that to see like the competition against stuff like that, and at the same time, like, I mean, do you remember how long it took Coinbase to list Dash? And you could tell they did their due diligence because of the confirmations that they required when they list Dash. There's only two confirmations. I think it's one now. I can't be sure about that. But you can tell that they were like looking through it very closely before they did it. And then with Shiba, like Dogecoin comes out and is like, just when people are like, take a breath from just realizing this whole Dogecoin nonsense, and Shiba Inu exists, and then it's on Coinbase. It's like, maybe because it was like a token, it was easier technically to list, but it still is a little crazy for like the Coinbase effect was huge before. And now it's almost a joke. And
Yeah.
yeah, we have Sven says, hey Sven. All right. As long as we have Sven with us, nothing else matters. I mean, as long as we have Sven watching, we're probably three people watching. All right. We're probably good to go. So, hey everyone. I'm going to roll the intro graphic real quick and we'll get right on into this. So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Some of you were in the last podcast, some of you weren't, but for the rest of you, hey, happy Friday. Welcome to the Dash Podcast. I am joined by the one and only Ernesto Contreras, Head of Business Development for Dash Core Group now. How long has it been since you've had that title? Because I remember you were a manager for Latin America, and then since then, at some point, you moved up to the head honcho, the big cheese. So when did that happen?
Well, first of all, thank you, Joel, for the time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's great to be back here talking to you and all the Dash community and everybody that watches this, because I know you go way beyond the Dash community. So,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Yeah, when I come to think about it, I mean, I've been in Dash core group for a little less than 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember that about a year of it was when we were working after Brad left Dash.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing a lot of activities, and like officially internally, I started taking the role of head of business development in February of last year. I
Okay.
remember it clearly because the kind of uh, the first big item that happened like a couple days after Ryan asked me if I wanted to take the responsibility was what's his name, that Bitcoin maximalist that went to Venezuela and started saying that we have nothing.
You mean Peter McCormack? Was that guy?
Yeah, exactly. Like a couple days before
So
that, I had
ridiculous.
spoken to Ryan, and I just remember it because I was like, okay, this is like the fire test about PR and stuff.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Which is kind of funny because he went to the border, I think Colombia, and then he just said, "Oh, I heard that it's all a scam," and he just says that as gospel, which is not what a journalist should do. And then he later goes to El Salvador and buys something at a McDonald's and say, "Oh, Bitcoin's everywhere." It's like,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right, dude.
yeah. But anyways, it's just it's not that that was important, but I remember it because
Mm-hmm.
that episode happened on a Valentine's Day. So that day, I spent a lot of time on my Twitter and on
Mm-hmm.
Discord replying to stuff. And my wife was like, "Okay, Ernesto, are we having Valentine or not?" So I won't forget that it was on a February because of
Of course.
Valentine, and so that's it's been
Yeah.
a little bit more than a year.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the meme of like, honey, come to bed. No, I can't. People on the internet are wrong. It was exactly
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, before we launch into everything, just want to let people know uh, we're on YouTube. We're also on Odysee, so if you want to watch there, you can do that as well. If you want to leave, I don't have specific questions, just like a very general, you know, path of, conversation. And if you want to ask specific questions, please do it via the live super chat, the cointr.ee/the desert links. Throw me a couple of these, put in a little message. Do it sooner rather than later because it does take a while to kick in sometimes. Like it takes, it might be like 5 minutes before it shows up or something like that. So, yeah. And feel free to jump in the other live chats, although I will feel free to ignore messages that don't come through the super chat. But anyway, let's just get right into this. So, what have you guys been up to? That's a very casual and also a very expansive question. But basically, Dashcore Group Business Development has been, I guess, part of a lot of hallmark integrations and things like that for in the 2017, 2018, especially also 2019 era, and just like every week another thing going out. And then in the more recent years, there's been a slowdown in announcements, and it could be just because Dash News isn't around anymore, and we're not like finding them all the time, but it could be other things. And so basically, people don't have a lot of visibility as to the work you guys have been doing. So, what have you guys been up to?
yeah, yeah. So thank you for the question, and I'll go first with what we're doing and the overall strategy, and then I'll tell you a little bit on the recent announcements. So, as you know, about 2 years ago, 3 years, we said that cryptocurrency and DAS in particular was not going to be everything for everyone. So we chose 4 or 5 pillars where we thought we could get some kind of real traction.
Yeah.
So we started with the legal cannabis, with remittances, with esports, with Venezuela, and with trading. Over time, the strategy has evolved, and we know we're no longer pursuing the legal cannabis market because what we found through our partners and through direct conversations is that when I forget their name, when a retailer
Mm-hmm.
goes to do their finances, and they either try to get a bank account or they
Mm-hmm.
try to get through some fintech, when they started seeing that it's cannabis and crypto, the risk meter just goes off on the banking side.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the reasons why we couldn't pursue that so more. And remittances and esports are activities that we keep on looking at, but they're either very slow in the case of remittances, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
so easy to um, get banks or other organizations that are doing remittances to start doing crypto. But we don't call that off yet because we have some leads that might evolve into something. And esports is something that we wanted to do a lot. We see a clear match, but most times the tickets are very, very expensive. As you know, the
Mm-hmm.
esports players, they can make a couple $1 million per big tournament. So that's not a budget that we're close to. So we've tried to continue doing esports, not as much as we wanted to. Actually, last time we posted a proposal, we wanted to use some of those funds to start doing esports, uh, but then the price went from the 400 again to the 100 and something. So we couldn't cash out at the price we wanted to do some meaningful esports stuff. But we're still in some conversations, which brings us to the two key pillars where we've kept growth, which is activities in Venezuela and a lot of trading. Within those, we keep on growing a lot in Venezuela, and we'll go over it later.
Okay.
And some of the reasons why I think you have not seen so much noise about them is that we've already done huge things there. I mean, we're on Pizza Hut. We are I think in Q1, we announced the first supermarket chain in Venezuela, Excelsior Gamma. I was
Mm-hmm.
there, so I bought. And then every quarter we're adding one or two large supermarket chains. But to be honest, news pick up when it's the first time. When it's the second or the third chain, it's not as big as the first one. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk about it on the quarterly. But this quarter, through our partner Crypto Buyer, we announced two supermarket chains there. So all in all, there's, I would say, about 600 to 700 cashiers in Venezuela that take Dash directly. So,
Mm.
I mean, growth keeps happening, and we'll talk about Venezuela later, as I said. But it's not as big as, oh, the first chain. When Pizza Hut came out, it was the first. When Church's Chicken came out, it was the first. And in terms of trading, it's also quite similar. Dash is already listed on almost every major exchange across the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're maybe four or five large exchanges away from being on every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
A couple in Japan where Dash is not currently listed due to regulatory reasons. South Korea is another place, and the New York exchanges, and I think there's one other exchange in Europe.
Yeah,
So,
must be the UK because UK. I know that. Um, I think Lil Clemo is what he goes by. Some fellow in Discord and Reddit and Twitter and such from the UK says you can't buy Dash on Coinbase in the UK. So that must be it. Must be a UK exchange, just from
well,
top of my head.
yeah, well, I mean, we the other part, so just to finish this,
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela and trading, and most recently, especially this year, we've been using a lot of our resources to go after regulatory stuff. I mean,
Mm.
that's not really BD, but because we have the connection with exchanges, and because honestly, in Dashcore, we don't have a regulatory affairs position.
Yeah.
So we've created like a multitask group where Ryan is involved, Glenn, of course, is involved, Robert in the UK, and Omar and myself. So we, divide and conquer. So we've spent also quite a bit of time uh, figuring out what's going on in these places, and then reaching out and trying to get in front of the regulators to tell them, hey, this is not a hidden transaction. There are ways to be secure so that your neighbor doesn't see that what's your wallet balance. But there are tools that could prevent money laundering. And when we get to that decision maker and we explain to them that there are ways to work in a secure way for the end user of Dash, then they get it and they're like, yeah, that's good. So that's also taken a huge chunk of our time. And just to cover the UK part, what we've discovered so far is that there are some rumblings and the regulator is doing some activity. So they're researching what to do. They've announced last year that they were going to take strict measures to make sure everybody complied, but that has not been translated into the next step and into saying, oh, you can do this or you cannot do that. And what's happening is that some exchanges and platforms have taken a preemptive approach and have kind of stayed with some coins, and others they
Mm.
have not. So we are reaching out to everyone involved there. We have, I mean, I don't like to be like not direct, but what happens with regulators and regulatory stuff is that most times you cannot talk about what's going on because it's ongoing. Like once we signed an NDA to talk to a partner who then told us, I cannot tell you anything. But so that's the type of situations we deal with regulatory wise. And that's why, it's not very easy to provide feedback. On the most recent UK situation, the one with Uphold, I
Mm-hmm.
can share with you that we've reached out to the regulator, to the organization, and we're in the process of talking to all of them to figure out what was the reason for this decision, and most importantly, to figure out how we can help. And sometimes it's just about educating the regulator and saying that Dash has some features that are exactly the same as Bitcoin in terms of privacy, so they don't need to worry about that, or at least treat us in the same way that they treat Bitcoin. And other times is providing an introduction to a partner that serves for a certain purpose. So I mean, most cases, at least that I have been involved, we solve them and we come out, staying on the platform, like the case that the Bittrex case earlier
Mm-hmm.
this year. So I mean, the news is more about, oh, these coins were delisted from Bittrex, but when we came back up, it
There's
didn't
not a
have
lot
the
of
opposite
noise.
effect.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's it, right?
Mm-hmm. That tends to be the thing. So the summary of all that is basically the big areas you're still focusing on are Latin America and on getting on exchanges. And one of the big reasons there hasn't been as much news coming out is because in both of those cases, it's much more of a large integration and a long term thing. And you're also on almost all the exchanges. There's just like a couple of big ones. Is that kind of all correct?
Yeah, that's it. And that's why at the end of our conversation, I want to talk to you about what we're looking
Mm-hmm.
into the future that's going to allow us to keep growing where we have a network,
Mm-hmm.
we're not gonna, just let those ecosystems stay without growth, but also we're adding a couple of new verticals that will allow us to, stay in the spotlight and bring more volume and complement everything else we're doing.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. So, we're talking about all this kind of thing and the big integrations. And when you mention it, yeah, I can't really think of many major services that don't have Dash. It's either they're like some like Monero only thingy or something, like something very specific, or it's like a Lightning maximalist kind of thing. Like Strike is never adding Dash. That's just, it's just not going to happen, right? But the things that have stuck out are Coinbase Commerce and BitPay. Now, Coinbase, of course, already takes Dash. Coinbase Commerce does not. I have heard rumor or theorized that the reason for that is that New York doesn't basically allow Dash to be used by services, and therefore they just want everything to be uniform. And BitPay has never taken Dash, and that's probably a similar kind of a situation. So real quick, so first, what's being done about those two, then what more can we do, and that's you guys but also the rest of the Dash community, and then finally it's like we don't need BitPay anyway. Like what's the other big payment processor target that we are looking at or should be looking at?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, what we do when we encounter these big brick walls
Mm-hmm.
is that, we reach out, we try, and then when it's a no, we let it cool off. And, every 6 months or every 9 months, we have a reminder to again go and knock on the door because maybe the BitPay guy changed and now they're
Mm-hmm.
more open to do it. So that's what we've done in the case of BitPay. In the case of Coinbase, not all the time they provide the direct answer on why they will go one way or why not. So what we do is that we take all the information we have, and for example, we've seen that Coinbase Commerce is everywhere. So we're assuming that because we cannot be there, we cannot be in New York yet, that's the
Mm-hmm.
missing part. So what
Mm-hmm.
we're doing with that particular jurisdiction is that we're working with all the potential exchanges that can help us get listed into the New York area. And once we get there, we'll go back to the Coinbase guy and say, hey, if this was the reason why we were not listed, we got it done. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of New York, it's been kind of like a chicken and egg issue where,
Mm-hmm.
there's no clear certainty on why we're not there. So the exchanges have not listed Dash yet, and vice versa. Does that make sense? So we're
Yes.
working with a couple of exchanges and organizations to try to break into the New York market, because there's some kind of uh, uncertainty legally on why some exchanges have not added us there. And once we get there, um, we'll knock on the Coinbase Commerce door again. And it's all part of the growing as an ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to see, because the fact that Gemini carries
Mm-hmm.
Zcash means that some doors have opened. They
Yeah.
either managed to show regulators that some level of privacy is actually good for people, and we're trying to work on that angle to get into one of the exchanges in New York, which would then possibly help us get into the Coinbase Commerce service. And unlike you said, what we do is, even if some of these large services say no to that,
Mm-hmm.
we always think that every place that we can be in is a net positive. So sometimes we just take our no and go back to the drawing board and try to come back a few months down the road again. And sometimes it's a month later, but when it's a very solid no, we wait a quarter or 2 quarters,
Mm-hmm.
and that has been our approach to those places where we get those big ugly no's.
So Dash is on Coinbase, which is a bit licensed exchange, but in New York you cannot buy Dash. Now Zcash is on Gemini, which is a bit licensed exchange. Can you buy Zcash in New York on
Well,
Gemini?
yeah, I cannot tell you for sure because I have
Mm-hmm.
not personally bought Zcash in New York, but as far as I know, yes, you can. But if
Mm.
somebody has been able to do it from New York, please confirm or correct my comment. But I think it is possible to buy Zcash in New York.
Is Zcash on Coinbase? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I gotta check. I mean, I'll check later and write
Yeah,
you. But
it's just for random conversation, but it seems like they managed to get things done at least on the New York regulator side, whereas a regulate New York regulated exchange does support Dash, but Dash itself is not in New York. So it seems like I would just need people with bigger pockets or whatever to like some bigger players. So you mentioned we're going after exchanges in New York to try to get to the regulatory angle. Uh, which and obviously you can't talk about all the ones you're reaching out to necessarily, but Gemini's probably one of them. But which are the potential targets? Like, so what are the ones that Dash is not on that are in New York? So there's Gemini,
yeah.
there's Coinbase, which Dash is already on. And
Mhm.
what else is there? What other big ones are there?
Yeah. What happens with the very large exchanges
Mm-hmm.
is that they break up their geographies kind of by regulation. So in the US, many exchanges have, like a complete US um, exchange or license, and then a New York specific. It's not licensed because every state has a different way of operating.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, many exchanges allow you to operate everywhere except New York if there's a New York specific requirement, which is kind of similar to global exchanges. Because,
Mm-hmm.
for example, in Kraken, you have Kraken US, Kraken Japan, Kraken Europe. So that's how they kind of organize themselves. And what we do is, if we are already on one of these exchanges and there is a geography where something is missing, we try to go through that route to see if we can solve for the missing geography. In the
Mm.
case of New York, we made a list. I don't remember by heart, but there's about 14 different organizations that carry cryptocurrencies. And we've
Mm-hmm.
reached out to every one of them, including ATM companies that only operate in New York, and including some companies that are Bitcoin only. So we go, we knock on their door, we say, hey, we want to get into New York. We can do all of these things with Dash. There's Dash Direct has been a great presentation card because we say, not only can you just trade another crypto, but with Dash, you can actually use it. And we want to
Yeah.
offer this to your customers. So we knock on everyone's door. some reply, some say let's talk, others don't reply, and we keep on trying. And where we have a contact from another geography, we ask them to introduce us to the New York team, and we take it from there. Actually, I'm not sure if it was last year or earlier this year. Ryan went for about a month to New York, and he
Mm-hmm.
was, knocking on doors and getting some meetings and getting some introductions. Some of it were for the regulatory aspect of the business.
Yeah, and so basically, it's funny you mentioned Dash Direct because not too long ago, like last month, we had a video made of someone buying something in New York specifically with Dash Direct, which is of course a good thing. There might be at some point a way we can get a big operation where we get a lot of videos of people using Dash in New York all over the place, get them out there, get a big social media campaign targeting every single one of these exchanges and things like that. That's another possibility. But yeah, basically that's kind of it, right? As far as that's the big BitPay Coinbase Commerce kind of hold up. And so I mean, usually if someone's like, "Oh, I'm going to put on Bit," like we haven't cared too much about BitPay other than it was, it's a big payment processor, one of the big, more important crypto ones. But it's like, yeah, we don't need them. But recently, I mean, AMC Theaters, in a very high profile thing, added probably BitPay, and they had a whole bunch of coins except for Dash, like a half dozen. And then similarly, I forget the payment processor that's in like 600,000 merchants in the US, but they added everything except Dash. And then it started to become like a worrying trend of, oh, is it going to be everything except Dash everywhere? Is Dash just not going to be part of mass adoption? And that's the part that kind of concerns me. So, are there any other, assuming that New York will never do its thing, right? That just New York is just like, nope, we are too regulatorily backward. Dash is too small of a project on the market cap rankings. We're just not going to care. And assuming you can never get into BitPay or Coinbase Commerce through those ways, what's the backup plan? Are there any other big payment processors or things like that we've been looking into?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm giving away part of the last part of the conversation,
Yeah.
but another vertical that we decided to add like a month ago, was US point of sale companies. So
Mm-hmm.
we started reaching out, first making the list of all the companies that we can talk to in the US, and then started to craft a message, figure out what we can offer to them, and we started actually reaching out to some of them. It's very fresh, but we believe that the time is right now to start directly talking to some of these companies. And it's great because we don't come to them saying, hey, at Dash, we're cool. We're like, yeah, we have a big community of Dash users. There's more than 155,000 places in the US that already take Dash. And we
Mm-hmm.
have all the experience from experiments and learnings we've done in Venezuela that we can bring to the table. So
Mm-hmm.
not only are we offering fast and inexpensive crypto, we're offering the experience from real world crypto usage in Venezuela. And one of our partners in Venezuela is very interested in either providing some of his solutions so these guys don't have to build it from scratch, or
Mm-hmm.
just being in communication with them. So that's one of the
Interesting.
verticals that we started looking at. And if people from the community have any connections or contacts, or they know a representative from one of them, they can just raise their hand and we can talk about how to get integrated. What we started is, in every industry, there's the huge guys, the
Yeah.
Squares and the PayPals of the world, and they are usually not the first ones to adopt a new technology or to adopt something different than Bitcoin. We started, chipping away at the middle of the sizes, because we believe those, that guy that is in the fifth place or the sixth place, they want to leapfrog everyone else and get to the first or second place. So we started looking into that range of companies. And as a matter of fact, this month, there will be a conference on payments called Money 2020. And past years we've been there, and we have seen that the interest was not so big yet, but we feel that this year we'll be able to get many more leads and hopefully some big integrations into US points of sale organizations.
Yeah, well, that's good to know for sure. And there's a million different ways we could go from there, but let's just go to the next thing, the Horizen sidechain thing. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing that we got a lot of publicity for from the Horizen community. So Horizen, formerly known as Zencash, was known as a dashified Zcash, or basically Zcash with a treasury and stuff like that, and like master nodes, or not really, but secure nodes and other stuff, and then pivoted to become a sidechain platform rather than trying to be just encrypted digital cash. And then, as far as I know, I don't remember. I haven't spoken with Rob in a little while, but when I did, I know they were trying to take encryption, like ZK snarks, all that stuff, off of the main chain to have it just be
Mm-hmm.
fully transparent, and then have, when people spin up a sidechain, they can do an encrypted sidechain to do things like that. So that's basically, there was a announcement that Dashcore Group had partnered with Horizen for some sort of a solution that would basically kind of a community energizer type of thing, of
Mm-hmm.
tracking community efforts for social media and other things like that, and rewarding them and things like that. And then there was the predictable, you know everyone does not know how to take this in a million different ways, positive and negative, of course. Some people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, this is awesome. Are we getting like what?" But no one really knows what's going on as far as like community. So, really quick, you want to give a quick summary, like what is it, and then kind of go into details about what to actually expect from this partnership.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this partnership is an experiment that we
Mm-hmm.
are running with the Horizon team. Um, they've wanted, when I first met them, they had a project of enabling merchants to accept a cryptocurrency and get rewards on them. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the and that is the original vision. Let's say I get Joel to sign up a couple of merchants, and I
Mm-hmm.
give you, I'm making this up, one dash per every merchant that you get. And then
Yeah.
if you get a team of your own and everyone in your team gets more merchants, then you give them, one extra dash, and the chain would be able to facilitate the payments without disclosing who your team is to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that would allow to for me as one of the persons in the chain to go and audit somebody else's store without knowing that I'm auditing your team. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
that was the vision and the initial plan. And in order to get there, we knew we had to break it down into stages because with the experience we've had with merchants and the potential human problems, so one of the questions I asked was, well, what happens if I am Joel's friend and I pretend to go and audit his stores, but I'm just helping him out? So we understood that that is something that can be possible. So we said, okay, let's break down the project into stages. And it looks like the first stage is going to be social media driven. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
vision. And the whole plan is Dash Core Group is not getting involved in any part of development because we don't have any resource for anything else than platform. So Horizen is with their own resources developing the side chain to
Mm-hmm.
not to take the information and not make it public in terms of the people that would be working in this referral chain,
Yeah.
and Dash would be the payments rail. So it
Mm-hmm.
is important to know that they could have done this with any other coin, any other fast coin, Ripple, Litecoin, whatever, but they reached out to us, or we came to an idea of cooperating because they understand that Dash has done a lot of efforts into going out and getting real merchants.
Mm.
So there is a respect that the Horizen team and community has for Dash as a whole for getting merchants. And in our case, our support is mostly in working with them, business development,
Mm-hmm.
on how the chain should operate once it's done, and whenever it's done, putting it out there for the Dash community to try, initially on some kind of social media or digital channels, and then as a second stage, whenever it gets there, as some kind of physical component of verification of merchants or validation of transactions happening. So I think it was a very nice experiment. They are
Mm-hmm.
developing everything as we spoke, and when we made it public, it was more of, these two chains are working together to try to solve one problem that nobody has solved yet.
Mm.
It's very important to know that none of these features are at least on the short-term plan for platform.
Mm.
So there is no competition there. It's not going to be a names or anything. Platform, as far as I know, in the first stages, is not going to have any zero knowledge proof, so that you would not know who's doing what.
Mm.
And that's why I felt strongly that this would be an experiment that could help the Dash community overall. Some liked it, some didn't like it. I believe it's good to experiment things and to try out new approaches, because you don't know if the outcome is going to be great.
Yeah. It's so just to, I guess, recap what the thing actually is. So it's some sort of a portal that, let's just say, someone in DCG runs, and it's for verifying things, as in, did you make a social media post? Did you onboard a merchant? Something like that. And that kind of stuff is encrypted as far as who is in what the zero knowledge part is. Whoever's verifying thing can verify that a post was made, a business was on board, something like that, but they don't know who did it necessarily. And so they can just kind of independently verify that it worked. And then through this portal, someone will be using Dash, the currency Dash, to then reward the task. Is that kind of the summary of
Yeah,
this whole thing?
yeah. Let me give you an example of a
Mm-hmm.
company that I worked with that would be a very good fit for this. Before working in crypto, I worked for a telecom company. And what happens in the top up business is that, let's say the major carrier gives you 6% when
Mm-hmm.
you top up a phone, and then you get a couple of stores, and let's say Joel, who's getting 6% every time he tops up, offers these other stores 5%. And then
Mm-hmm.
these stores, they're hustlers, and they go and they get a team of salespeople, each one of these stores, to go out and sell top ups and get 3%.
Mm-hmm.
The stores do not want Joel to know who these people are,
Mm-hmm.
but they still need to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So this tool would allow for everyone to know that there is a different set of levels doing work, and that they're actually getting paid what they're supposed to be paid.
Mm.
So that would be the final outcome of this, and that would be useful for merchant acquisition and consumer driven activities, because store B might want to check if store A's merchants are actually operating,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want to give out who is checking what.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit highly conceptual in terms of how it will work. And the team of Horizen is developing the solutions to enable verification and not disclosing who it is. And I believe it is very likely that the concept might change. But the most important part was, we're putting our heads together to figure out a way of using their technology with our fast and
Mm.
inexpensive way of transmitting value for a project that could eventually help us both.
Yeah. And so you mentioned merchant onboarding as like the big conceptual use case to this. So I have to think that a big part of inspiration for this kind of a thing has to be our good friend George Donnelly, right? Because as I'm sure you remember, during now Bitcoin Cash promoter and Dash hater George Donnelly, when he worked for Dash, there was some competition between the different adoption teams as far as who onboarded which merchant, and then they know which person onboarded which merchant, and then they go talk to those people and say change it to our payment processor because they want to like steal their things, and then oh well, look at all these merchants we have, who onboarded which one. Like there's a lot of you know I don't think that we have the same culture in the Dash ecosystem today for that kind of negative, the bad competition, like the cannibalism kind of thing. But it still seems like it would solve that sort of a problem, right? Like let's just say the Venezuelan team plus the Donnelly team are all just plugged into this same system. Every individual is there. They just onboard merchants, and then they get a percentage of whatever. They get a percentage of a sign up bonus or whatever, and they're not hiring independent auditors to go audit the other people and try to attack the other team, because there's one source of auditing everything that doesn't know who onboarded what, right? So do you kind of see it as a solution to the Donnelly problem? I'm sure it's much more than that, but do you see it
Yeah.
as a kind of a solution to that?
It's funny how you name the problem, but yeah, it was more aimed at how can we get a tool that will allow for audits without disclosing who is the auditor's name.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in a way, it became apparent to us that this is a problem that needs to be solved. And when the Horizen team told us that they had been thinking about a tool that could kind of look for a way to solve that problem, we thought it was going to be a good thing for them to finish developing the technology, and for
Mm-hmm.
us to be their go-to-market test partner in order to
Yeah.
figure out if it works. So it's still work in progress. The developers from Horizen have always been very clear that things might change because
Mm-hmm.
this development is new. So if you guys are watching, I'm not trying to compromise you to deliver that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the spirit in which we enter into this experiment with Horizen.
Yeah. So a couple questions on the technical parts. First off, when is this meant to or expected to come out? And obviously, it goes to the whole Win Evo thing, except for a different team that we have less visibility on, right? So I understand
Yeah.
that's got to be fuzzy. And then the second question is, when do you think that some kind of similar approach could be done on Dash platform? Obviously, it's not MVP. It's not like first quarter next year. Probably not next year at all. Who knows? But because I do remember at some point, Arizona State University was paid by Dash to do research into zero knowledge proofs, but from what I hear, specifically for platform for similar types of use cases. So yeah, basically, first, when does Horizen expect this thing to be ready? And then second, when could something like this be built on Dash platform? Like, obviously, they're both very general estimates, but yeah,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I'll have actually a catch up with the Horizen team next week.
Mm-hmm.
But last time we spoke, they were targeting probably middle of next quarter
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, for the social media part.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that the end vision was
Mm-hmm.
to be able to deploy this on stores. So
Mm-hmm.
we said, well, let's do initially something that is social media. And of course, I can check that it was Joel who tweeted, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
go spend, go buy on Uber with Dash Direct," and it defeats the purpose of the zero knowledge proof. But this first stage of being social media exclusive will allow to see that the platform is working, if that
Mm.
makes sense. And
Yeah,
in
proof of
terms of
concept.
Dash platform, I I'm not aware of what they're thinking after names.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know if zero knowledge proof is something that will be integrated by the core developers. I know that a big part of platform is to release the product and then bring a lot of development communities and a lot of developers
Mm-hmm.
to help build on top of that. So I would be, lying to you if I said that I know if Quantum and his team are thinking of adding that specific feature, which is one of the reasons why I thought it would be good to test it out with another team, because if it's something that's not in our near-term radar, it's going to be a net benefit for us to have it work. Maybe if it works really well, then we would push that up into our pipeline. And if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work as well, then we say, well, it's not a good idea. So it's
Yeah.
all about finding the market fit and figuring out where to allocate the resources that are always scarce.
Yeah, and so as far as this specific portal is concerned, is this going to be a something that Dash Core Group operates exclusively? And if so, it's going to be like the marketing department, like say Arden's going to run this thing or hire someone to run it, or is it going to be all of DCG, or is it going to be like a tool that like other members of the greater Dash community can end up using?
Yeah. Well, it's still to be defined how it's going to operate. My
Mm-hmm.
vision has been to create a tool, test that it works, and then put it out into the community and allow
Mm-hmm.
anybody in the community to
Yeah.
use the tool and to serve. I think the way I see myself and the rest of the team, we should be enabling other teams to replicate what we've learned, and replicate the successes and tell them, hey, this is not working, so don't go that way. I mean, you can
Yeah.
still go that way if you choose to, but that's why I always try to share the learnings and the
Mm-hmm.
comments from the things we've done. So ideally we would test it out, put a few dash in it to provide incentives to people, and then definitely figure out a way of either opening up accounts to other dash communities or making it public. Although I'm not a fan of making it public, because I don't want to put it out there and then have uh, Bitcoin Cash copy it. I would rather
Speaking
just
of Donnelly.
I would rather just figure out a way of
Mm.
saying anybody that has an approved proposal can get access to this, or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now let's hit on the whole Venezuela thing. And um, I remember in the 2017 bull run, obviously Dash started doing better, right? As far as like market performance and stuff. But it was still just, it wasn't until, so that, like, I think a lot of people in Dash today are upset or disgruntled because their expectations were set by the 2017 bull run, where over the course of 1 year, Dash went from $10 to 1,600 USD,
Yeah.
and got a huge like. And hype cycles are real, and as much as I didn't want to, I didn't really see it as much at the time. In retrospect, it wasn't just stuff is going not as well today. It's also we hit a crazy hype cycle, and
Yeah.
that made people have weird expectations. And so people who bought at the top of that hype cycle, for example, are probably going to have to wait a while before they completely recoup up to those levels. But
Yeah.
two big things that fueled the 2017 Dash hype cycle were evolution slash platform,
Hmm.
which a lot of people unfortunately expected to be out mid 2018, and then Venezuela. And the Venezuela thing was, it's going to be using by everyone. Venezuela, everyone's using Dash there, like all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, he hit like CoinDesk hit piece, and then we hit Peter McCormack and stuff, as we mentioned, and just, but that wasn't most of it. There was the thing where a lot of people investigated a bunch of the merchants, and a few different people investigated, and it was an imperfect, I would say, number of integrations or whatever, like as far as like accuracy of things. Well, not a huge scandal, but the merchant team there involved with it ended up doing something scandalous, which was, falsifying some financial records because they were under pressure to, disclose stuff. And, that basically fueled, the whole Venezuela thing was just a scam. And part of that ended up coinciding with fewer larger integrations there and just fewer news stories. So now the greater world, I guess, does not think that there's anything going on with Dash in Venezuela today. In fact, when I posted the whole so I did a parody video of the Jack Mahler's Lightning announcement thing, and as part of that, I sent a remittance with Dash to Juan Arguello of Dash Text, and then he went and bought something in Burger King, right there. He was outside of Burger King. He went and used his Telegram thing and bought something, and I shared that, and someone mentioned me oh wow, I didn't know that. I thought that you mean there's actually something going on with Dash in Venezuela. I thought it was all a scam, and I'm like, Jesus, dude. So even the Dash faithful, as it were, have not heard a lot of stuff going out of Venezuela. And I've heard a lot of masters even say that was, in retrospect, a failed strategy. It should not have been pursued because, we had all this stuff and it didn't work out and people aren't really using it there. And it's a big waste of money. And so you guys are still, Dash Core Group at least is still heavily focused on Venezuela, at least to a certain extent. So first off, what do you think is going on there? What are you guys working on there? What have you guys continued to see get achieved? And obviously the big problem with all the merchants was not enough people actually going to them and spending Dash other than the Dash funded teams. And so the second part is, what can we do to solve the egg part of the chicken or the egg problem of getting people to actually have Dash and spend it? And how's that going? So anyway, what's going on in Venezuela?
Yeah. Well, before I reply to that, let me just have some coffee with my Venezuelan mug.
Hey, of course. Yes, I was going to mention that earlier, but I figured, it'd come up soon enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason with expectations, or the issue with expectations, is that a lot of people think that this is going to happen all of a sudden. You start working there, you get a couple of places, and then suddenly everybody starts using crypto. But that has not happened anywhere in the world. Beyond the speculation part, there are very few places where people are using crypto for their everyday things. I have quite a few people that are right now in Salvador, and payments are not happening there right now because paying with a new digital method is complicated. You need to download the wallet, you need to understand how it works, and then once you know how it works, you need to be able to acquire it easily. So, number one, I want to put it in context of the rest of the world. What we've done in Venezuela has not happened anywhere else. So, just because it hasn't happened at light speed, it doesn't mean that it's not happening continuously.
Yeah.
What we've done is that we've seen more and more merchants sign up. And luckily for us, we've had other teams come and join efforts. Binance has been doing a huge job growing in Venezuela. I don't know if you've seen that local Bitcoin volumes have plummeted. The reason is Binance started working heavily in Venezuela, and they basically ate local Bitcoin's piece of the share. And that is on the peer-to-peer market. But something interesting is that Binance does not only have peer-to-peer market, they're also having a Binance Pay solution. So as of now, in Venezuela, there is the Dash team, there is Binance, and there are a couple of partner of ours, Crypto Buyer being one of the biggest ones. So all of these stories to tell you that during all of 2020 and all of 2021, particularly these three teams continued building in Venezuela. And we went from having a few thousand mom and pop stores back in 2018 with the Dash stickers, many of them were working correctly and others were not working right, which was the whole reason that the this news place
The drama.
made a hit piece about us. But the reason is every time you go mom and pop, that's going to happen because
Mm-hmm.
if you have, and it's funny because I've read the same thing happening in El Salvador, and it makes sense. If there's a coffee shop called Valenzuela's Coffee, and Joel is the one that's taking, let's say, Lightning Network because he's a crazy Bitcoin maximalist. The moment Joel goes to have lunch and I stay there alone, I'm your employee, somebody wants to come and pay, and I'll be like, no, the boss has the wallet. So that doesn't happen. So that's the stage we were in 2018. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, there's a bit of noise. So
Yeah.
2018 was the stage of that. Then we evolved into more merchant integration and direct points of sale, which is the stage that we are right now. There are, I recall, about five large supermarkets. The biggest one being Plaza, which is a nationwide supermarket with over 30 locations, kind of like a Walmart in the US.
Yeah.
There's Plaza, there's Excelsior Gamma, there's Forum, there's Bio Market. So there's a handful of supermarkets besides Pizza Hut, besides Truckee. So we're now not only in the stage where there are uh, hundreds of these mom and pop shops. There's also these larger merchants where Dash is integrated directly into the point of sale thanks to Crypto Buyer. And we have a pipeline of about a couple of other new points of sale
Mm.
options that will enable more places. So, what we're doing is number one, we're getting the word out there that there's this thing called cryptocurrency that you can pay with. Number two, we're enabling frictionless options. And number three, which is the stage that we're working on right now, we're working on ways of getting people receiving Dash massively. Because a big issue that we've seen, and I'm sure that you have seen here in the US,
Mm-hmm.
buying crypto is not as easy as you thought it could be.
Yeah.
You need to go to an exchange, you need to do KYC, you need to open an account, you need to deposit the money, you need to wait for the money to be there, and then you need to take the money out of your account. If you add volatility to that solution, even in a place with Venezuela, it's not as straightforward. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember, on Q1, we announced a Dasher Pay, a solution called Dasher Pay, which is a
Mm-hmm.
way that you can start getting people paid in Dash, and we've continuously expanded that experiment. And just recently we added a new merchant, and what we've done is we've gone with a contractor we have there, and we've figured out who wants to offer a bonus to their employees in Dash. And then we found out that some of them didn't want because they have a lot of dollars in
Mm-hmm.
they have enough physical dollars. So for example, for a store that sells to people directly, it is not as interesting to give a bonus in Dash because they told us, hey, here I have dollars. I have no problem giving my employees a bonus. But we found other places where they're either giving bonuses in bolivars. So we help them to acquire Dash in a legal and compliant way so that, if because hyperinflation keeps happening, and when I finish this, I'll reply to a couple of questions that Sash asked on Discord,
Hmm.
on Twitter, I mean. But so we've gone from only integrations to now how do we get more Dash into the hands of people, and that's the stage we're at. I mean, it's not as fancy, and it doesn't hit the news when you get a few hundred more people to get paid in Dash, but you
Mm-hmm.
eventually start seeing that in volumes, and that is exactly what has been happening. I had a call with Crypto Buyer last week, and what they mentioned is that last month, in number of transactions, we outpaced every other currency on their platform. So
Mm.
even though we still don't have the visibility of everything that's happening in the country, we are seeing trends that the more Dash is present everywhere, people prefer it to pay.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, so that's a pretty good comprehensive view of things. There's just obviously not as much splash around that, but I'm sure I could help with that to get more media out there about what's going on. But we're talking about getting paid in Dash. So where do the merchants? So first off, the Dasher Pay thing is mostly for bonuses, correct? It's not a lot of people are getting salaries. Is that right?
Well, yeah, yeah.
It's so where did the merchants get the Dash to begin with to then send it? I mean, obviously they can get paid, but who had the Dash first to pay them to then send that? Because otherwise, then you have a very small, like 10 Dash in the Venezuelan ecosystem. The same 10 Dash just keeps going around in like a very small little circle rather than more Dash coming into Venezuela and being used by people and then being paid to people.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of the challenges we encountered first. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
we need to build a solution that is scalable and
Mm-hmm.
that does not depend on Ernesto and Leury chasing the merchants and telling them. So what the software has been built by Dash Text. So what
Mm-hmm.
they did is they built a platform where you can distribute Dash. And that
Mm-hmm.
platform is then connected to a wallet, and what we do is teach the HR person where to buy Dash and how to buy it. So we point the HR person to one of the exchanges that operates in Venezuela. And then we help that person and we support them. And when I say we, it's not only me or Larry, it's Dash Help. So this is a
Mm-hmm.
joint action. So we tell, let's say, HR person from Church's Chicken, hey, whenever it's your time to pay the payroll, you can just call Dash Help and they will help you acquire the Dash on this platform. Then they
Mm-hmm.
acquire the Dash, exactly what they're going to pay, and the system just takes the Dash in one input and distributes to the, I think Church's Chicken has been doing like 27 people per month. And
Mm-hmm.
then these people get, from 5, 10, $20 at the end of the month, which is a small bonus compared to their salary. And then we have seen that none of them cash out. All of them
Mm-hmm.
go and buy directly in stores.
Okay.
So we've been tweaking that and fixing, number one, how to make it compliant, because we don't want to offer a service that then would put Church's Chicken in problem with the legal authorities.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, once Dash Text built a product that can be used in a compliant way, we are starting to roll it out into other places. And we've got right now a handful of stores. I think it's between 6 or 8 that are in this pilot phase. And what we expect, there's a 3 month period where we first offer them an extra bonus, and then we teach them, you not only can you speculate with this thing called Dash, you
Mm-hmm.
can go to this exchange and change your Dash for a stable coin if you want to keep it and avoid fluctuation, or you can go directly to this place called Church's Chicken or to this merchant and buy any product you want directly with Dash. And what we've seen is that there has been a very high retention on that particular front. So just to summarize, our efforts in Venezuela are building on top of each other. I wrote here on Q1, it kind of went under the radar, but through our partner Crypto Buyer, uh, we added a place called Simple TV, which has
Mm.
4 million subscribers in Venezuela. And then in Q2, we added a couple of supermarkets. So the more you can use Dash in different places, the more it becomes a real currency. And the more people would be willing to get a bonus or all of their salary in Dash, as opposed to 2018, where it was more of a novelty and you could only buy things with Dash in Church's Chicken. So we've
Mm-hmm.
gone from the different difficult place of telling people that this is not only to speculate, that you can solve issues, and now to enable people to receive that constantly. We're also working on remittance activities for Venezuela, and of course, freelancers and people getting paid from abroad. But that's a different monster on its own.
Of
We
course.
found that it's we can get more scale with the bonus part.
Yeah, so we're talking about the bonus model. From what you're saying, seems to be what's working, at least to begin with. Now, how, first off, why do the employees want to be paid in Dash for their bonus rather than something else like bolivares or dollars or whatever? And then second, why would the merchant want to pay their bonus in Dash? Because they have to then buy it from the exchange or whatever and then send it out. Why would they want to do that other than that? So why for those both things?
Yeah, man, I'm very happy you asked this question because we have been breaking our brains for these answers for months. So, number one, why would, okay, there's bolivars and there's dollars going around in Venezuela. So, everybody wants dollars. That's what they
Of
want.
course.
But there are problems when you have dollars. By the way, did you know that I stayed in Venezuela for a year now? Okay, so I lived through all of this directly, so I'm not telling you what I've heard.
Yeah.
Um, there are between 3.5 and $5 billion going around in bills in Venezuela, but there is very little change. So once I went to have breakfast with my mom at this place that sells arepas, and the bill was $17. So the lady just told me, hey, there's no change. Please grab a couple more cookies and we'll round it up to 20. And I was like, I don't want to pay 20. I want to pay 17. So that's the reason why somebody would want to complement their money with some digital cash.
With something that's a little bit more divisible and liquid, I
Exactly.
guess.
Exactly. So what happens is we are seeing that people go to pay, for example, those $17 with a 10 and $7 in Dash. So that's why we're going bonus and not full salary because yeah, you can pay with dollars everywhere. Right now, you cannot pay with Dash everywhere, although we have a huge integration coming up. But okay, so that's the reason why somebody would want to complement their the money in their wallets with crypto. And then why would a merchant want to pay their employees in something other than dollars? Number one, because employees do not want to get bolivars. When employees get bolivars, I mean, the news about inflation in Venezuela have decreased, but the reality is that the country lowered its inflation from like 2 million to about 2,000. So yeah, it's not in the headlines anymore, but it's still very destructive. Just in the beginning of this month, on October 1st, they eliminated 6 zeros from the currency, and
I
dollar
remember
went
when
from,
they did that in Mexico in the 90s.
yep. So the dollar went from almost 4 million bolivars per dollar to 5 million bolivars in a matter of days. So that's why people don't want to get bolivars. Dollars are already explained. And then those merchants that receive a lot of bolivars are the ones that we're targeting because they are the ones that are more interested in changing part of these bolivars into Dash and then paying their employees.
Yeah, and so both of them have an incentive to want to get out of the fiat system.
To want to get out of the Bolivar system or want to not get tied to the dollar without change system. And it's taken us a lot of time to figure out who are some of these merchants that or organizations that are willing to that do not have a lot of dollars to pay their employees. And when I say a lot of dollars, I mean like change, small bills. I'm going to pay Joel Valenzuela $1,347, and some have the money, the change, and it's no problem. But we have found a couple of niches where they have that problem, and they seem to be more than happy to start working with us. And I say they seem to be because this is something that has been going on for about only a quarter because we've been in the discovery phase.
Yeah, and so that to kind of add to that whole thing. So first off, how many major crypto exchanges are there in Venezuela, and how many of those take Dash or support Dash rather?
I mean, major crypto exchanges, you could say local Bitcoin, local cryptos, Binance, and all of the large ones, except local Bitcoins, accept Dash. There are 8 regulated exchanges in Venezuela, and about half of them you can buy and sell Dash.
Well, that's good. Uh, Now the other thing, and this has been, one of the things we watching. One thing I watched for several years is the cryptocurrency metrics, as far as all the major chains that not like, you know, what is it? Not like Solana and things like that are just cranking out millions of transactions for, you know, whatever data purposes. I don't really care as much about that. But like as far as the payment type things, how many Bitcoin transactions, what are the fees like? How much of the block reward comes from fees, all that kind of stuff across things. And one thing I noticed, I mean, obviously, it seems like Litecoin and Dogecoin were the more popular alternatives to Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin Cash had like spikes and then not really use spikes. It's really hard to tell, especially because they used a lot of app kind of usages for that. Bitcoin SV was even more like that, like millions of day that could be just spam. Who knows? But like Dash was consistently from like 6 to 7 to 8,000 per day in like the 2017 era, was like creeping up over time for a lot of like small transactions and things like that. And that was what most people, including Ryan, when he was doing quarterly calls, were looking at as far as the metrics for success. Like, well, okay, the price doesn't always do what we want it to. Who cares? But we're being used more and more. And then, of course, things go up. And then right around when the Chinese mining thing happened, when China banned mining and a lot of mining pools left the country, when the hash rate crashed, because of course they turned off a lot of miners, the transaction count also crashed for Dash, because Dash was like in the 30 to 28,000 to like 40,000 range of daily transactions, and then it just fell off a cliff almost overnight and is now somewhere around the 10,000 a day. And so basically half, if not more, half to two-thirds of Dash's transactions were for small purposes, were from a single source or a collection of small sources that were all tied together, something to do with China, but who knows? So basically, it's been hard to say. That was what I was going on, and obviously Ryan too, as far as like, look, Dash is being used more and more and more. We're actually being used, and then now that metric is no longer any good because of that. I mean, of course, it's still informative, right? But as far as there was a big crash, and it wasn't like a bunch of people were using Dash for day-to-day money and they just stopped all at the same time. So when you're talking about crypto buyer and other places, they're like, oh, Dash is the most spent kind of currency. And obviously those numbers are relatively high, but they're not on the whole very high. You're not having too many thousands a day spending Dash. It can't, because it's not on the blockchain anywhere. So basically, first off, what kinds of metrics are you using or what kind of metrics are you using to, let me rephrase that. What are the metrics, what are the growth metrics showing in Venezuela, for example, or amongst payment processors like CryptoBuyer, right? Let's just say CryptoBuyer and a few other main payment processors. What information are you seeing that is telling us that Dash is growing in usage, or is it growing? It might not be. It might be flat for the moment. And then second is, you're talking about paying bonuses and then creating that circular economy and all this good stuff, and that there's at least 20 or so employees getting that right now, and hopefully going to expand.
That's only churches, chicken, just to clarify.
Yes. It's so, when will that grow enough to where we start to actually seeing it on the blockchain? What, instead of it like, 500 extra transactions a day, no one's going, which, it's a lot of payments, I guess, compared to what most cryptos are being used. That's a lot, but you don't see it on the transactions because it's too small. So first off, what are the growth metrics you're seeing, if you are at all? I mean, you might not be. And then second is, when do you expect there to be enough growth in payments and salary and things like that to where it actually shows up on the blockchain?
Yeah. Well, the metrics we see are generally two. Well, overall, we don't get visibility into everything we wanted to. but we do get visibility either from crypto buyer on a bi-monthly or every 3 months basis,
Mm-hmm.
and with a couple of some of these supermarkets, we became friends, and they share the data,
Mm-hmm.
every month or every 2 months. So what we see is total volume and total transactions. We are seeing that per locations, they can get a few thousand transactions a month.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing is that more people are using it. Of course, there are big spikes when there are price spikes, because people say, oh, that $100 that Joel paid me for this translation is now
Mm-hmm.
$200. Let me go and buy whatever. So we see that usage
I do
is
that myself.
related to price action. But what's been interesting is that on the use cases that we have found, where it's either part of people's salary or is something that they receive as a result of work, the behavior is constant. People
Mm-hmm.
use it as money. So just to summarize, crypto buyer informed us that they've been growing about 20 to 30% year over year when they calculate the months.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the result of them adding more places to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is that people that were signing up to this salary tool are remaining, and we're still not ready to put it out and expect it to grow by itself. But I believe that if we keep on the trend, we can get up to 1,000 people in the short term receiving Dash constantly. So when you add that Dasher Pay, whenever we get to the hundreds or the thousands of people, I believe we can go now and try to hunt bigger organizations, because just like the point of sale in the US approach that I told you, we started with mid-sized organizations. And once we get that sorted out, we have a couple of large places. For example, I'm going to be presenting to one of the big soda companies that operates in the country. So we are already on some of these people's radar, but we're not going to offer the Dasher Pay solution to them until we've got figured out most of the details. Because with these big guys, you cannot miss. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to continue seeing uh, more of a linear growth in the near term. And eventually, once we figure out that yes, this is a problem that we're solving for both the employee and the employer, and there are ways that they can be legally acquiring and distributing the Dash without any problems, we'll be able to go to the very large points of sale. And we have part of the work already completed, because
Mm-hmm.
of all the work that Eugenia and the Dash Merchant and all these guys did. There's more than 2,000 organizations that have been related to Dash in some way.
Mm-hmm.
These are some of our first clients, and some of the bigger ones, which is the ones that will provide the exponential amount of transactions, will be ready to onboard probably by next year.
Yeah. So basically, the end of this quarter and the beginning of next quarter, you expect to see things look different, like start to see some kind of evidence of success.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is that every new organization or project that we bring builds up on what has been done. And we're
Mm-hmm.
not only doing the payroll solution ourselves, we're also talking to organizations that pay payroll, and because this is a tool that complements their systems. So I mean, I've always told my team that we have to work on things that are sustainable. I don't
Yeah.
want to create a dashboard and have that kind of activities where we suddenly invite 100 people to come and have a Dash in Vita event, and then have, here's 300 transactions on a day. So we're trying things that we believe can be sustainable, or we will not do things at all.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I did get one question in a live chat about from one time. Hi, one time. Can Dash be used to pay for rent or buy real estate in Venezuela?
Yes, yes,
For both of
there's
those?
for both. there's a company called Century 21
Yeah, I know
that
them in the U.S.
yeah, they're a franchise in Venezuela as well, and some of their people have been told to accept Bitcoin and Dash, and
Mm-hmm.
the reason they use it is because, let's say I'm buying a house or I'm selling my parents' house in Venezuela. If they pay me, well, number one, I most likely will not want to get paid in bolivars for all
Of
the reasons
course.
we already discussed. And if you're paying $100,000 or $200,000 in dollars, I certainly don't want that in cash. So
Mm-hmm.
cryptocurrency becomes a real option, and we have seen some people already making those offers in Venezuela. The issue with that is that those large transactions, especially when it's sale, do not have a perfect match with Dash, and that's why we have not focused on that use case. Because if you're paying $100,000, it is okay if you have to wait for the 6 confirmations of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But that's why we focus more on the smaller amount of transactions.
Yeah, it's so that reminds me of a few months ago. I went to a local brewery, which is the same place we're going to be having Dash Fest next weekend. And some a friend of mine who's a realtor, he like shows up. He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he like has this like printed piece of paper, and he's like, "I'm trying to sell a house. I'm going to sell a house for Bitcoin." And
Okay.
this is what we printed out, and like, how many confirmations do you think we should wait before we consider the down payment to be final? Oh, which is such a funny question to just receive at a random brewery who's just showing up like, oh, we're gonna sell a house for Bitcoin and stuff. Welcome to the future, right? But I think it is interesting when you're talking about how like you Bitcoin is not that slow for a house down payment. You know, where you send, you basically put the initial money down for a house. That's a lot of money. You can wait a few hours for that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, other things like you're just, hey, can I eat my sandwich yet? No. How
Yeah.
how many can't? Okay, now okay, it's good. It just
Exactly.
like that kind of a thing is kind of funny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's kind of wrap up with this whole greater point. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit before, and I I've kind of noticed myself about a lot in the past. There was a lot of teams that were not Dash Corp Group, but there was other Dash funded teams that were running around doing business development kind of work and all kind of working together. And since then, there have been quite a few fewer than there are today. Like, for example, from my memory, the Dash Embassy in the German regions, did a lot of really good work, and then at some point hit. They just wanted to do a marketing pivot or something like that, and then whatever happened, they ended up getting defunded and going away. And then the same things happened to a couple of other ones. I don't know what the current status of Dash Next is. I do know that they did not get funding, I believe, last cycle, but maybe they
Yeah.
got refunded.
Yeah. They didn't get enough votes before the end of the cycle, but then they
Mm-hmm.
got the votes after the cycle. But in the
Yeah.
same voting cycle, the
Mm-hmm.
Dash Mall team, who were doing a good job on the western side of Venezuela, got defunded.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean,
Like, and
something that
completely defunded. Like, not just, oh, well, this cycle, we'll
yeah,
try again
yeah,
next.
they got completely defunded.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we need to consider as a DAO incomplete is how can we attract more teams to do different stuff? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think it is okay to tell, and I'm, starting with the assumption that it's a hardworking, honest team. So let's
Yeah.
say,
Which
this
is an
team.
assumption.
Yeah, well, but let's say,
Yeah.
but it's okay to have somebody that's working hard, however you define that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're being honest. It's okay to tell them, hey, what you're doing is not in the best interest of Dash anymore, so pivot. The issue is
Mm-hmm.
if you just defund the team and you don't have a way of communicating with them that, what the network wants is a bit different. I think, back in the 2019 days when we had like 4 or 5 teams in Latin America, even if there were some redundancies and if
Yeah.
some teams were more effective than others, that would provide more value to Dash than only having 2 teams, which is what we have now.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in our messaging that, hey,
Mm-hmm.
back in the 2017 and 18 era, we were having a lot of news constantly. Well, a
Mm-hmm.
part of it is that we had a lot of business development organizations doing work around the world, and sometimes some of this big news would come from DCG, but a lot of the times those news would also come from the other organizations. I'll give you an example. Church's Chicken was initially developed by Dash Venezuela, and we
Mm-hmm.
helped, just to push that over the edge for them, and we provided a few incentives in terms of combos for people to buy,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a very good example of how the DAO can be a very powerful thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is something that we as a DAO should review, and that is something that we need to solve. How do we bring more quality teams to Dash to do more activities, even if some of the activities are not as efficient as we want? As I was telling you, I think it's better to have more multiple teams doing work, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
not the most perfect one, than having only a handful of teams.
Yeah. And I agree. It's a very complicated, or I would say, it's a very multiple layers to that situation, and obviously everyone has their own opinions. Uh, I there's a few big problems. So I honestly think what ended up happening was, for right or wrong, the masternodes as a whole were paying a lot of money to a bunch of teams, and they were not seeing satisfactory results from the team relative to what they were being paid in their estimation. And so they decided to discontinue. And I've seen this over time where you have a team that's doing this stuff, and then at some point, like, I'm never really surprised when something gets defunded because you see it coming from a long ways. Like the vote margins go, so you hear people saying, "What are we paying these people already?" Like you see it coming from a long ways, and then it goes away. And I can't tell if it's they get money because it's like, oh, they have a good pitch, they have a good idea, people like the idea, let's give them a shot, and then after a few months they're like, all right, that didn't work out, bye bye. Or if it's they give them a shot and they pay them based on their good performance, and then over a long period of time the performance goes down, and then they get rid of them. Or it could just be that they, you know, just get tired with people and defund them because they're sociopaths. I mean, that could be a little bit of it too. You never know. One thing that I've noticed as a problem is every other major cryptocurrency community that I've noticed has a lot of volunteer effort. And Dash has very little compared to other similarly sized things. Like think about Litecoin. Litecoin has a foundation and it's Charlie Lee, but then it has nothing. But I know a lot of Litecoin people who are out there getting businesses, or not a lot, obviously, or starting meetups. There's just a lot of people doing stuff. And then I've noticed that this is the Dash life cycle. Is one of those people, one of those groups of people or individuals wants to start helping out, either as soon as they start doing something useful or immediately, or even before they do, they end up getting pushed into the treasury. So there's someone who, like, let's just say they're starting meetups and running things and for free because they want to. And then either they get their idea or people tell them, go to the treasury, get paid, Dash can pay you for this. And then they go, and then their focus turns from helping on the ground to how am I going to craft a proposal and keep on getting money. And like I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced the same thing myself in the past where
Yeah.
with Dash Force, obviously we were always working really hard to do everything we could to promote Dash in the best way possible, as much as possible. And in the back of our heads, and it started to grow in the back of our heads, is how do we please, how do we pay everyone that is working for us? And then how do we please the masternodes so they keep on funding us? Even though we're still focused on doing what we wanted to, it's like it starts to be like now the proposal wants to survive as a proposal rather than their number one priority is the work they did. And then if you lose funding, I mean, there's a few people like myself who are still here, right? Didn't leave. But a lot of people, when they lose funding, then they get angry and then they're gone. Either
Oh,
they're
really? Get
either
angry.
they're either they're gone from Dash completely or they just aren't volunteering. So then a lot of times where you would have a low level volunteer person who does something useful consistently over time on another project with Dash, you have them doing that. They get paid, their output goes up, and then they burn out and go away because they get defunded. And
Yeah.
that's the cycle I hope that we'd like to avoid. We've seen that with a lot of DFOs before.
Yeah.
I don't entirely. I think that we need to have more people doing things on a volunteer basis as an example to others that this can be done. But also, I think that I'm a big fan of this, as I call it, like the incubator model. And that's why I started my own kind of thing on this, or heading this up, because then first off, people can, they're fast to pivot of like, what are we going to do? We can just decide on the fly, we need to do something different. Someone else can jump in. But also, like, people can get paid for the work they do, and they don't get paid for the work they don't do. So it's not like people are sucking money every month, whether they're delivering or not. It's like they have to be paid for it. And it also helps people to, like, go and do something. Like, for example, Juan from Dash Text was part of this specific bounty to do a video of, spending the remittance in Burger King via Telegram, and so that's paid. And so we don't have to be like, all right, let's start the Juan Arguello's media project in Venezuela proposal, and let's just lobby for votes and all this extra inefficiency. He just gets to jump in there, do some work, and then go back to whatever he's doing. Or if he's really good and wants to, keeps doing things. So I think that, I mean, the incubator is great. I like the job we've done with the Dash Marketing Hub. We've already gotten videos of people using Dash Direct in 30% of the US already, and hopefully a lot more soon. We've done a whole bunch of other stuff. But I hope that there's going to be a business development incubator at some point. That someone runs a thing that's not like, oh, me and my team, what are we doing? Can we hold on to this? That just sort of manages this platform where people can come in and just say, like, I'm going to like just put a big bounty on Gemini. Just say, if you can get Gemini to list Dash and you have some kind of evidence that you had something to do with this, you get, I don't know, why not 1,000 Dash, right? Get a whole master node if you can get on Gemini. And then people compete and work for it, and then they can do it, as opposed to funding the Gemini acquisition team that has salaries, and month after month they keep getting paid, and then they're like, we're still trying on Gemini, and 6 months later they haven't gotten, and then they get defunded, and then they go off to like Monero or something like that, So
Yeah.
that's what I would really like to see. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I think that whether that's the model or something similar, uh, a part that we need to work on really hard in Dash is how to attract more teams and then help them stay. Whether it's through the I'm drawing a blank, the hub, or whether it's through a bounty type of model. But you know, the DAO decided that it was time not to fund again the team in Europe. Okay, there should be a way of discussing: are we not going to do anything else in Europe, and why? And if it's not because or through the DAC embassy guys, who else can we lure into Dash and have them work? Because end of the day, that is Dash that is not being created, and there needs to be the discussion of: do we want to burn this 100 dash that the DACA embassy was getting paid every month, or do we
Mm-hmm.
want to assign it to somebody else? And that's a whole different discussion that needs to happen at the DAO level. And
Mm-hmm.
what I have done so far to participate in this is that when people reach out asking for a suggestion, for some help,
Mm-hmm.
or to take a look at the proposal, I always try to make myself available to
Yes.
try and foster more teams. I've always said it. We need to do more business development, more marketing, more social media in Dash. And the more teams and professionals we can bring in, the better we'll be.
Yeah. And I do agree on that. The thing that has suffered in the past, which I think we're starting to get finally to. So a lot of these problems are just, it's not like there were a lot of mistakes made, of course, but there was a lot of problems that weren't just mistakes. They were just, it had to be that way because we were early. And like, for example, I like to tell people that like Dash was only a better payment option than, let's just say, Litecoin ever since instant send became every transaction by default. And before then, it had no, like, the little feature was just a proof of concept, but it didn't have a practical thing. And also, Dash has had no end user product forever, basically. I mean, oh yeah, sure, you can pay people, whatever, but with Dash Direct, for example, in the US, you have an end user product. You don't, because I always face that thing every time I went to do a conference and was just like, all right, I'm going to tell everyone, hey, Dash is great. And they all love it. And okay, I'll give you a wallet and I'll give you some Dash. And then what? Like, nothing. That's what. But now there's an end user product you can actually get people to use. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's one of those things where, like we're talking about, I can't wait until CrayPay Dash Direct comes up with a referral program, because once they do, then I'm sure some entity of Dash, whether it's Dash Core Group or a different one, can partner with them to incentivize new signups to Dash Direct. And then,
Like a sidechain project, right? Where you can
yeah,
keep the identity
yeah, it could be.
without disclosing.
Yes. Or if it's just
I'm
like
just
a
speaking in you because that was kind of the
yes.
thought process of that product.
Yeah, it's similar to that. Or if it's just like, for example, I have a BitRefill referral code, which by the way, if any of you want to use BitRefill, use the code DCN and I get $10 if you spend $50 worth of stuff there. That kind of a thing where you don't have to worry so much about like, oh, is this team scamming us? Like, what are they doing? They just
Yep.
say, look at all the conversions we actually got. That's not gameable, right? And so, for example, it's easy, I would say now, to fund a Dash Direct acquisition team in the US, because you could just say, how many people did you get to sign up and actually make a purchase with Dash Direct? And of course, you could also like you could make sure that they're not just creating new emails and phone numbers and faking it and stuff. As long as you figure that out, you can just say, all right, well, you clearly got all these customers on board, and here's the evidence. And then we can get to see, do they have recurring spending habits? Like, how does it work out? So that, like in the US, this idea of a performing team is, I would say, easy, but it's very simple. It's very direct. Venezuela is a little bit of a probably a trickier situation, but if you can say, for example, if you get a new business on board to start paying employees bonuses to just get signed up with a Dasher Pay, that's something you could easily figure out, I guess, or simple, maybe not easy, but
Or
simple.
less difficult, yeah. But I
Yes.
agree with you. Yeah.
And then you could see how many of those businesses were actually giving bonuses in Dash, as opposed to they just signed up and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
you could start to measure the growth there. And these are problems that Dash has had that other companies, right? Not saying Dash is a company, obviously, but companies have not had this, because when Visa or MasterCard sends someone out there, they have a budget, they have a product, an end user product, and then they have like revenue to make. And so it's easy to say, did you sign up? We paid you this much. Did you sign up enough merchants that will give us revenue to make it worth it? And it's easy. With Dash, Dash is like a natural resource. It's not even like a product. And so like, did you like, hey, gold is fantastic. All right, great. But the gold thing, you have to be Peter Schiff and actually selling gold, right? Where you, in order for that to make sense, otherwise, who cares if you talk about gold? There's no money in talking about it. And so that's, I think Dash is getting mature to the point where you can kind of, do that. And so what would be interesting to see is when Thorchain comes on board, how many people can you get to swap their other coins for Dash on Thorchain and then either provide liquidity for more or then spend it via Dash Direct. That'll be the interesting thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, just to add to that and summarize,
Mm-hmm.
um, Dash basically, as far as I know, invented the DAO and the
Mm-hmm.
first ecosystem around it. I think now we need to take it to the next level and figure out a way that we can attract more fresh people in the community and make them provide value to Dash. That would help, the teams that are working now, like DCG and the marketing hub and everybody else. And it will definitely help Dash if we manage to, get people to experiment. And some will be successful, others won't. But with the successful ones, we will take Dash, to the next level.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up then with what is going on. What are you guys working on for the next quarter, next couple quarters? Let's just say end of this year to the first half of next year. What's in the pipeline?
Yeah, yeah. So as I mentioned initially, we continue working in Venezuela, where
Mm-hmm.
we have moved ahead. We are close to announcing a very massive partnership that will allow us to increase by an order of magnitude the amount of merchants that are taken. That will
Mm-hmm.
complement the payroll solutions that we're talking about and
Mm-hmm.
remittances. On the trading side, we'll continue adding mostly new fiat pairs. Just today, a couple of hours ago, we announced crypto market that
Mm-hmm.
is allowing the Argentinian peso to dash pair for the first time, and
Nice.
also another pair of Chilean peso and Brasilia real, all under crypto market. So we'll continue adding more pairs in the trading side. And also, we keep on looking for these big unicorns that are missing. There's like only four of them that we need to hunt.
Yeah,
And
which are
of
those for,
course,
by the way?
well, Gemini, we're looking for Bitstamp is another
Mm-hmm.
one. And the rest, the remaining two, I would say, are the more difficult ones because are the top exchanges in Japan and South Korea, which for
Mm-hmm.
regulatory reasons we have not gotten. But those are the 4 or 5
Mm-hmm.
very large exchanges that we're missing. And we'll, of course, continue adding more instant send exchanges and services and products like
Mm-hmm.
futures, swaps, loans, etc. But as you
Mm-hmm.
can see, we've de-emphasized the amount of time that we're dedicating to the trading vertical. And now
Yeah.
we've opened up the points of sale vertical in the US, which is going to be an experiment, but we believe the US is now willing to start accepting crypto. And we're going to take the learnings we've had with Venezuela and bring them here. An important part of all of this strategy is that we want to welcome Bruno Contardi, who
Mm-hmm.
is our business development manager for Latin America. Bruno is based in Brazil, and he's going to help us take care of all the fiat pairs that we're missing in the area and in other geographies. And he's also helping us start to make inroads into the fintech ecosystem in Brazil, which will not only complement the fintech and points of sale activities that we have in the US, but also will complement the Venezuelan strategy because there's about 100,000 Venezuelans. Well, last time I checked, it was between 70 or 80,000 Venezuelans in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are sending remittances. So as you can see, we try to grow in ways that create virtuous cycles and that
Mm-hmm.
complement each other to create an ecosystem. And well, that's what's next. So more of Venezuela, more of trading, new points of sale integrations in the US, and more fintech type of businesses throughout the Americas is where we feel that Dash is going to have an edge, and it's going to allow, for more fresh people to get to know Dash and use it. Like you said, people sometimes don't know about Dash, but when they use it and when they see that you can spend it in 155,000 places in the US, or you can send it across the globe and it's immediate and you don't need to wait for the confirmations, whether that's a coffee or a house,
Mm-hmm.
people like it. So we should be ready to take a bigger part of the share and to outgrow all of these other projects that are funny dogs.
Yeah, funny dog, gambling coins. Uh, so to add to that, yes, I have noticed that when people use Dash, they tend to be like
Wow.
I don't ever see a negative reaction. I rarely see a neutral, unimpressed reaction. Almost everyone, and like even if it's just the official Dash wallet, when they're said they're like, "Wow, this is easy to use. This is great." Uh, and the other thing I noticed is a lot of people in the Dash community are like longtime people are getting upset and bitter because they had expectations set by the 2017 bull cycle, and those are not delivering today. And so they're just like, oh man, I didn't Dash keep up, like that kind of stuff. And then also people in the crypto world who are just like, well, Dash, that's still a thing. But anytime you get a new person, they get excited. And one thing I notice is the dialogue you hear on the internet. When I go to people locally in New Hampshire, like the crypto community here, they're all using Dash and they all have a positive view on it and they all want to get more of it. And it's funny. It's like a very different kind of a world. And the other thing I would like to point out is people have used things like Bitrefill and stuff before. I use it all the time. People who live on Dash, and you can get almost any, say, masternode holder or average Dash user to try it once or twice, but the habit does not stick. I've noticed with Dash Direct is when people start using it, they don't stop. If they have Dash, they use it and then they keep using it and keep using it, and like I keep on getting like random reports of like people spending thousands of dollars a month through Dash Direct, or a day even sometimes. Like some people have actually hit some limits because they've just been using it so much. And so yeah, that tends to be sticky. So let me just say, so if you're watching this and looking to get involved, I got a lot of stuff for you to do. If you're in anywhere in the US and you want to make Dash Direct videos, just make a simple video of like, look, here I am outside of here in Florida. I'm outside the Chipotle in Florida. I'm going to go in, and then you just document the thing. You make a little video about that. It's 1.5 Dash per video of that right now. And a buddy of mine happens to be on a road trip through the U.S., and he's been just stopping in every state making Dash Direct videos, which is nice. But that's not the entire country. So I need a lot of people helping doing that.
Do you
If you,
need Florida?
um, I think so. I don't think I
Okay,
have someone there.
I'll do Florida. I'm right now in Miami, so I'll do that one for you.
Sure, I'll send you the whole thing. And
Yeah.
so it's funny because I could have done Florida because I bought my first Dash Direct purchase when I was in Miami. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's
No,
but
it's
I
cool.
didn't have the
We'll
bounty
do
yet.
that, and then with the 1.5 dash, I'll get maybe 10 videos done in Venezuela, so we'll get a
Yeah,
lot more bang for our buck.
there's also a bounty for spending Dash outside of Dash Direct everywhere in the world. So if you I already showed Juan, I think, but also I'll just show you like the bounties of all this kind of stuff, because there's
Okay.
bounties for like basically the big thing. I need everyone to do videos of using
Okay.
Dash, because people don't know that they're doing this. People don't know you can use Dash, really.
Uh
They
huh.
don't know that it's real money that real people are using. Dash people are not very loud. They're not as loud as Bitcoin maximalists going to El Salvador, buying one thing and going home and going back to their swipey card, you know? But so basically, if you're anywhere in the world and you can use Dash to buy something, I need a video of it. And if you don't know if you can use Dash to buy something, believe me, I can help you find it. Some dude was complaining about in Sweden, I can't spend Dash. I found like 8 merchants around him that he could. And someone in Turkey the same way found some stuff. So I can help you with that. That's the big thing. But we also need help with getting people like me, like Ernesto, like Ryan, like Marshall of Dash Direct on shows. And I'm on a show anytime, anywhere. I got on Ken Bozak's show a couple weeks ago and got him to download Dash Direct live on air, which is nice. I'll do like 3-4 hours of podcasts a day if you can if you can line them up for me. There's a bounty based on how big the show is for arranging the interview. So if you watch any crypto show, just go and, hey, I think you'd love to have this guy on. He's been living on banked off Dash for 5 years. Why don't you have him on, tell his story? Or, hey, I hear you talking about this kind of stuff. I know an entrepreneur who created a thing that got almost mass adoption in the US in just one service. You should talk to him. And if they say yes, you get some of the money. And whoever does the interview gets some of the money too. And it's all super transparent and public and stuff like that. And yeah, I'll be putting in another proposal in a few days, I guess, to continue this kind of thing. But, we're keeping it lean, but we're getting a lot of work done out of this. So that's just mostly what I'd like to say. The last thing I'd like to say is a week from this Sunday, is in the 17th, we're having an event here in New Hampshire called Dash Fest, where we're all going to Abel Ebenezer Brewing that accepts Dash and just having a good old meet and greet and party. And a lot of people will be spending Dash for the first time there. It's just a way of like getting to use it. If you want to come out and actually see it used in the real world, you can come out. We're having people from all over come out, and a whole lot of local people too. And the business owner loves this stuff. He uses Dash all the time. In fact, he posted something about he started using Dash Direct to get his camping supplies and stuff updated, and he was like blown away at how easy it was. He's addicted now too. So if you want to give my friend Carl and his business a lot of Dash so he can keep on using Dash Direct, come out to Dash Fest, 2 p.m. Abel Ebenezer Brewing in Merrimack, New Hampshire on Sunday the 17th. And there's a pinned thing in Reddit, or just find me and ask me about it. So that's all I have. What else you got, Ernesto?
Yeah, just wanted to stand up. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to put the accelerator on US point of sale companies. So if anybody from the Dash community has any connections or works with a company that provides point of sale services for restaurants, for shops, for supermarkets, please reach out. And if you guys have any comments, questions, or things you want to follow up after this episode, just hit me up on Twitter at Ernesto Contreras, or Discord. Although I'm not that active on Discord, but I promise I'll check it out more often.
Yeah, Twitter's good. I encourage everyone who's on Discord to spend a lot more time on Twitter because it's public. And then you get to just, like, the rest of the world sees this Dash-related activity, and it's good. Well, anyway, all right, that concludes the podcast. Now it's time for the after party, which is similar to this thing where we just chat, except it's not recorded, it's not public, and you can have a whole bunch of people. I think the biggest one was a few weeks ago. We had 17 people in there, which is a good time. So you have to go to, sorry for promoting Discord, but you have to go to the Dash Talk Discord, or Dash Discord rather, staydashy.com. I'm going to put that in the live chat here. And then you just start asking around at, hey, where's the after party at? Is there an after party? What's going on? And then, someone will put you in. The last few times I have not really been around for that for very much, but I will be this time. So if you want to join, you may join. All right, I put in both live chats. And I guess we're good to wrap up, huh?
Well, Joel, as usual, a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Always available for speaking to you and the rest of the community. And please, if you have any comments or questions, just hit me up. It's always great to share learnings, to share ideas, thoughts, and, the occasional laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, bye, everyone. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.